Welcome to another deep dive. This time we're heading to the world of Angkor. I bet you've heard of Angkor Wat.
Of course.
Yeah, that iconic temple, right, in Cambodia.
Yeah.
We're going to find out that Angkor Wat's just the tip of the iceberg.
I like it.
We're going deep, deep into the history, the culture, and the unbelievable architecture, using some really interesting sources. I mean, where else are you going to find a 13th century diary working alongside NASA radar images?
It really is an incredible blend. We've got this ancient perspective from a Chinese diplomat and the latest modern tech giving us a whole new view.
It's like having a time machine.
Right, totally.
So first things first,
Yeah.
we got to rewind back to 1860. Picture this, a French naturalist, Henri Mouhot. He's trekking through the Cambodian jungle, not looking for temples, but get this,
I'm hooked.
looking for insects.
No way.
Talk about a lucky find. He stumbles upon this massive temple complex, completely hidden by the jungle.
Imagine that.
I know, right?
It must have been incredible.
I mean, reading his journals, you could feel the awe. He compares these temples to Solomon's temple, even the work of Michelangelo.
That sense of wonder when you discover something that's been lost for centuries, it's magical, isn't it?
Totally. And sadly, Muhot's story has a touch of tragedy. He died pretty soon after, from an illness he got in the jungle. But his writings, those sparked this global interest in Angkor. And that's when things really got going. Archaeologists, historians, everyone wanted to know more.
And that's where our 13th century friend comes in, Zhu Daguan, the Chinese diplomat.
Ah, Zhu Daguan.
Yeah.
His diary, right. I mean, at first, people didn't think much of it, but now it's like a golden ticket to understanding what life was like back then.
Talk about a primary source. He was right there, living it.
Right in the thick of it. And get this, he was an educated Chinese official visiting the Khmer civilization. I mean, talk about a culture clash.
Two totally different worlds colliding.
Exactly. And his perspective is so fascinating. He calls the Khmer people barbarians.
Really?
Yeah, but at the same time, he's totally blown away by their achievements.
Yeah, that's what I love about his diary. It's got that clash, but you can tell he's intrigued. He talks about the king's lavish lifestyle, the city buzzing with activity, laws, punishments. You get the whole picture.
And here's something that always gets me, the sheer size of Angkor. People think it's just Angkor Wat, but Zhu Daguan's diary makes it clear this was a whole city.
Oh, yeah, it was massive. And thanks to modern technology, we now know just how massive.
That's right. NASA, with their radar imaging, revealed that Angkor was the size of London.
A sprawling metropolis right in the middle of the Cambodian jungle. It's mind-boggling.
It really is. And not just big, but meticulously planned. When you see those radar images,
You see it all laid out, don't you? Roads, canals, all in this grid system. That's some serious urban planning. And we can't forget their water management.
the Khmer were absolute masters of water. Let's be real, Cambodia's climate is wild, long, dry seasons, then, bam, monsoon season.
You've got to be prepared.
And they were. They built this incredible system of reservoirs, canals, dikes, the whole works. They were way ahead of their time.
They were centuries ahead of Europe in terms of water engineering.
It's mind-blowing how they did it without modern technology.
Imagine these giant reservoirs, some of them over a square kilometer. They caught the monsoon rains, basically giant sponges keeping the city going during the dry times.
So they had the storage part down, but how did they move all that water?
Canals, a whole network of them, radiating out from the reservoirs like arteries carrying water everywhere, the rice fields, the city, even the temples.
It's like Venice, but 1,000 years earlier.
Absolutely. Bustling with boats, transporting everything. It was an incredible system. And maintaining it, that was a feat of engineering. Excavations have shown they designed it all with specific levels and gradients to keep the water flowing perfectly.
They worked with nature, didn't they? Not against it.
Exactly. It's a beautiful thing to see that kind of harmony. But it also required constant attention. Blockages, leaks, they had to be on top of it all the time. A true community effort.
And they kept it going for centuries. It's amazing. It makes you think, what can we learn from them? Especially now, with all the environmental challenges we face.
That's the million-dollar question, and one we'll dig into more in the next part of our deep dive. But first, let's switch gears a little and look at the people who lived in Angkor. Thankfully, Zhu Daguan gives us a sneak peek into their daily lives. Welcome back to Angkor. Last time, we left off with how those incredible Khmer folks managed to build a city that lasted for centuries.
That water system's seriously mind-blowing, right?
Oh, totally. But let's not forget about the people who actually lived there.
Exactly. We've talked about the city, the engineering, but what was it like, day-to-day life?
Well, that's where our friend Zhu Daguan comes in handy. He gives us some amazing insights into their society.
Yeah, his diary is full of little nuggets, like their social structure. It was a pretty hierarchical society.
Oh, for sure. But it wasn't static. There was a lot going on.
What do you mean?
Well, for instance, he talks about the marketplace, bustling with activity.
Oh, I love those details.
Yeah. And women played a big role in commerce, which is something he noted because it was quite different from China at the time.
It really makes you realize these were real people just living their lives, buying, selling, raising families, dealing with everyday stuff just like us.
Absolutely. And then there's the royal court, the whole shebang with the king.
Yeah, all that pomp and circumstance.
Yeah, Zhu Dorwin goes into great detail about it. Ceremonies, the king decked out in gold and jewels, carried around on a palanquin. It was a big deal.
Sounds pretty lavish.
Mm-hmm.
But what about the everyday folks? Did they get a taste of that luxury?
Well, not quite. Zhu Dorwin does mention slaves, and the law was pretty strict.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, punishments could be brutal, even mutilation in some cases. Makes you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a good reminder that even in these advanced societies, things weren't always rosy.
Exactly. We can't just gloss over the tough stuff, We have to acknowledge it.
Right. It's about seeing the whole picture, complexities and all.
Absolutely. But we also have to be careful not to judge the past by today's standards.
Good point. It's about understanding the context, seeing the world through their eyes, even if it was very different from ours.
Exactly. And remember, Zerdegwan's diary is just one perspective. We need to consider other sources too.
Like those puzzle pieces, each one giving us a little glimpse, but together we get a better picture.
Exactly. Archaeological findings, inscriptions on the temples, even later travelers' accounts. They all contribute to the story.
Speaking of temples, let's bring it back to Angkor Wat. Remember we talked about the Khmer kings being seen as divine rulers. I'm curious how that played out in their architecture and city planning.
Oh, great question. Those massive reservoirs, the canals, they weren't just practical.
There was a deeper meaning.
Absolutely. They were symbols of the king's power, his connection to the divine.
So like showing off their ability to control nature, godlike powers and all that.
You got it. And the temples themselves were designed to evoke awe and wonder. Angkor Wat, for example, is perfectly aligned with the rising sun on the spring equinox. Not a coincidence.
Wow, so the whole city was a statement, blending the practical with the spiritual. That's incredible.
It really is. And there's something there for us to learn from even today. Imagine if we designed our cities like that, incorporating nature, symbolism, making them meaningful spaces.
Yeah, like buildings that work with the environment, using rainwater, natural light, green spaces, and reflecting the values of the community.
Exactly. Functional, but also beautiful, even inspiring.
Makes you think, right?
It does. And it brings us back to that big question you asked earlier. What can we learn from Angkor, especially that amazing water system?
Yeah, it kept a whole city going for centuries. But we also know it was a delicate balance, one that eventually failed. What happened? And what can we learn from their decline and not just their successes? I guess that's for next time. All right, we're back in Angkor. It's been quite a journey, hasn't it?
Absolutely. From lost city to rediscovering its secrets, it's amazing what we've learned.
And now, the big question. What happened? Why did this amazing city, with its incredible technology and culture, just disappear?
It's a question that has puzzled historians for a long time, and there's no easy answer.
So it wasn't like one big event that brought it all down?
Not exactly. It seems to be more of a perfect storm. A combination of factors that led to its decline.
Like what?
Well, one of the biggest factors was probably conflict. Angkor had its fair share of battles with neighboring kingdoms.
Oh yeah, those Siamese attacks were pretty brutal, weren't they?
Exactly. The Siamese eventually sacked Angkor in 1431. That must have been a huge blow.
Definitely. But we've also talked about how their water system, as amazing as it was, could also have been a point of weakness.
Right. Remember those precise levels and gradients?
Yeah, they were crucial for keeping everything flowing smoothly.
Any disruption to that balance and the whole system could be thrown off.
So things like deforestation, soil erosion, even changes in rainfall patterns from climate change could have messed things up.
Exactly. Imagine canals getting blocked, water levels fluctuating. That could have been devastating for their agriculture.
Which would lead to food shortages and all sorts of social problems.
Exactly. It's a domino effect. And then there's the impact of some of the Khmer kings, especially Jayavarman VII. He was known for his massive building project.
Oh yeah, the great builder king. But maybe he overdid it a little.
Possibly. Some historians think he might have stretched Angkor's resources too thin.
Too much of a good thing, right? But there were also some internal shifts going on too, right? Like that big religious change during Jayavarman VII's reign.
Ah, yes, the shift from Hinduism to Buddhism. That was a major turning point.
So for centuries, they had this divine king, the Devaraja, and then suddenly it's a more egalitarian Buddhist system.
That must have had some serious ripple effects on their society.
I bet. I mean, if the king's no longer seen as a god king, does that weaken his authority?
Possibly. And maybe people became less willing to support those huge building projects. It's also possible that the focus shifted from those grand temples to more community-oriented Buddhist structures, like monasteries.
So it's this whole mix of things, environmental pressures, political changes, even ideological shifts, and eventually it all becomes too much.
It seems so. But even though Angkor was abandoned, its legacy lives on. It's a powerful reminder of what humans are capable of, both the good and the bad.
Exactly. And what can we learn from Angkor's story? I mean, it's not just about marveling at their achievements, but also understanding how things can go wrong.
Absolutely. For me, one of the biggest takeaways is that everything's connected. Human actions, how we manage resources, our political systems, even our beliefs, it all plays a role.
It's a reminder that we can't just focus on one thing and ignore everything else. We need to think holistically and consider the long-term consequences of our choices.
Exactly. Angkor's water system is a perfect example. They were brilliant engineers, but they also had to work constantly to maintain that balance.
Makes you think about how we approach our own challenges today, like climate change and resource scarcity.
What if we applied that same level of ingenuity and long-term vision? Imagine cities designed in harmony with nature, using sustainable practices.
For cities that are not only functional, but also beautiful and inspiring.
Exactly. Angkor, with all its triumphs and tragedies, shows us that we have the power to shape our world. We can learn from the past, adapt to changing conditions, and build a better future.
Wow. What an incredible deep dive this has been. We've journeyed through time, explored a lost civilization, and uncovered some timeless wisdom. It's clear history isn't just about the past. It's about understanding ourselves and the world we live in. Thanks for joining us on this adventure. We hope you'll keep exploring and discovering the fascinating connections between then, now, and the future.